Hey, everybody. I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers here with SF DocFest. We're celebrating 23 years of bringing some of the most unusual, cool, and irreverent documentaries from around the world to the Bay Area. For some of you old stalwarts out here, you might even remember our first year at SF DocFest, which was in a empty church in downtown, and we had like 3 days of just kind of weird and cool films. And so when we ran across opening night film, the Donn of Tiki you've just seen, of course we knew we wanted to have it as part of SF Doc Fest. It's just such a SF Doc Fest sort of film, and we're lucky enough to have the directors Alex and Max here. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
Most definitely. I mean, maybe a good place to start is like, how did you know that this was the kind of the rabbit hole of a documentary that you wanted to go down?
Well, rabbit hole is a good word for it, actually, because we started out with the idea to do just a short project on one of the LA-based tiki bars. This was back during the pandemic when we had a little bit of spare time and everything was kind of shut down, so we thought we might have access. And as we started doing some research and talking to people, about the third or fourth time somebody said something along the lines of, "Oh, none of this would have been possible without Don Beach." We were we were like, okay, well, this is something we got to dig into a bit. And the more we learned about his life, the more we thought, okay, this is a bigger story. This really should be a feature. And so we were kind of doing the film before we realized we were doing it.
And do I mean, just given the visual nature, of tiki culture and things like, how did that kind of influence the aesthetic in regards to how you wanted to do the interviews, but then also at what point in time did the animation kind of come into play?
Yeah, the
Well,
interview.
early on,
Oh
or
yeah.
go ahead, Alex. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say the interviews. We knew that we wanted everything to be really vibrant and colorful, and Max is a very vibrant and colorful cinematographer already. So that was kind of we basically wanted the movie to look sort of like an Aloha shirt. Um, the animation came into play when we knew that we had these recordings of Don telling these stories, and we wanted to show some of these stories, and we knew that animation was going to be the way to do that. So we had this idea of doing animation that kind of matched the time period with which the story was being told. And our friends at Venturia Animation were great at making that happen and helping us bring that idea to fruition.
And
Yeah, and I think that's always kind of a challenge, right, with documentary work, is like you only have so much archival footage or imagery to work with. So we knew that the animation was going to be a big part of it to fill in the gaps.
where did some of the the kind of you know what were some of the ways that you kind of like went on this kind of archival quest to find out where it was? I mean, did people just kind of have boxes in their attics and things, or how did you kind of get word of mouth? How did this stuff kind of percolate up?
Well, we used a lot of newspaper articles and old menus and things like that. But the biggest thing was Don's widow, Phoebe Beach, had been kind of carrying around these crates of Don's stuff for years because um, he had always wanted to write an autobiography, but he never could. He said that he didn't like talking about himself, which is ironic. So she had all like this collection of stuff, and when we had reached out to her, she said she was working with Tim Glasner, who's in our film. He was writing a book about Don. And we kind of all coordinated so that she sent this archive over to Tim. Tim became kind of our archivist as we were making the film. We kind of let him know where we were at and what we needed, and he gave us access to the entire archive as he was kind of scanning and going through papers and journals and stuff like that. So it was kind of just this very serendipitous thing that Phoebe happened to still have this archive after all these years, and she had been working with Tim on doing a book right at the same time that we were starting out to produce this film.
I
Yeah,
think
probably 70 or sorry, go ahead, Chris.
go ahead, Max.
Oh, I was just going to say probably about 75% of what we used came from the archive itself, maybe a little less than that. And then we also looked and found some stuff in various museums. There were a couple of things just randomly in stock footage libraries that we stumbled across. And there were a few things that were in people's private collections. So it was a mix. It was all over the place.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just, thinking it's like, people often wonder why, why it's important to kind of keep this stuff around. It's just like, you just never know when somebody's going to want to make a documentary of your life.
Yeah.
What do you think? I know it's hard to guess, but like, what do you think Don would think about there being this film about him and the story that you told?
Well, we hope he would like it. I mean, I think he would love the idea of having a film about him. Um, it's funny. Early on in his life, he really created this persona that was Don the Beachcomber, which was basically a character that he played. And so there was this very like public facing, kind of celebrity figure, which is Don the Beachcomber. And then Don Beach, the individual, we learned really was kind of a private guy. And that was especially true later in his life. He was pretty he kept to himself. He wasn't so much in the public eye at that point. But he had these wonderful stories that he loved to tell. And so I think this film kind of gives him a chance to do that finally.
Yeah, just it's a great story, and as you guys started to kind of dig in and realize that there was this film that you wanted to make, what do you think some of the biggest surprises were for you, or things that were, kind of unexpected challenges?
I think the one of the most unexpected, well, I don't know if this was an unexpected challenge. Max, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, Don, even up until the end of his life, was still telling stories and still kind of exaggerating the truth. So kind of fact checking Don throughout the movie and his stories and trying to figure out what the truth is that he's basing this story off of became uh, took a huge percentage, I would say, of our time, just to make sure that we weren't perpetuating anything that wasn't true. And I think that we kind of early on decided, okay, well, if we can kind of pitch Don as this unreliable narrator, it gives us a little bit of leeway to let Don tell his story and people to decide what they believe and what they don't believe. Which helps us a lot. But there are a lot of things where even just like the little details and like the Marlene Dietrich story, we're like, okay, well, the year doesn't quite match up for it to be the premiere of Blue Angel, so maybe it was a different movie that Marlene Dietrich was in. He says that her favorite drink was the Gold Cup. Dawn's drink was Beachcomber's Gold, which later another restaurant, you know, made a version of Beachcomber's Gold called the Gold Cup, but that became a more popular drink. So, of course, in the 80s, when he's talking about it, he refers to it as the Gold Cup because it makes it sound like he invented the Gold Cup. So there's all like these little things like that where we kind of just let Don go off and tell his story. And if some of the facts are a little bit stretched or exaggerated, then that's on Don, not on us, is kind of
Yeah. I'd say the other thing that, some of the stuff, especially early on in his life, there just wasn't a lot of great documentation. This is going back into the early 1900s. And anything that we couldn't really find a paper trail for, or an article or something to kind of corroborate the story, we kind of just had to let it go. We were like, well, that's we don't know. We don't actually know what's true. That's just lost to time. Um, and then I would say one more challenge, Alex, that you didn't mention is the mob stuff. So in the
oh yeah.
1940, when Sonny kind of takes the business and she's starting up the Chicago location, and we know that these guys who ran the Chez Paris and were heavily connected in the mob were her partners. And the mob doesn't keep great records for that kind of stuff, right? I mean, they have some legitimate business records, but they don't have the stuff that ties them to the organized crime stuff. So there was a lot of back and forth about how to address that and what can we say. Um, So it took a little bit of finesse to figure out the best way to do that.
Um, and before I forget, you guys had mentioned originally that this started off as a documentary short about a local tiki bar in Southern California. What made you decide that that was like that was a story you wanted to tell? Was there something about the kind of the bar and location itself, or was it the larger tiki culture that fascinated you?
Yeah, I think it was tiki culture in general, and this was during the pandemic where I think we all needed a little bit of escape. And uh, I lived in LA at the time, and I was going to a lot of these bars when they were open. But after they closed, and then everything was closed during 2020. We kind of just figured, hey, they're not doing anything and we're not doing anything. Maybe we can go and, it was actually going to be a series. We were just going to kind of do like these little bars around LA and kind of talk to them about their history and everything. Which, one of the bars in LA, the Tiki Tea, it's fascinating. We kind of just touch the surface of it in the documentary, but it's a direct descendant from Don the Beachcombers, because Ray, who founded that bar in the 60s, was one of Don's Filipino bartenders in 1934 or 1933, depending on when it actually opened. So it really is like a historical connection to Don the Beachcombers in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And what do
And
you
one of
think?
the things, oh, go ahead.
I know, go ahead, Max.
Oh, I was just going to say, one of the things that Alex and I discussed a lot as we were making the film is kind of there's some interesting parallels between the tiki aesthetic and filmmaking, right? The idea of kind of you go through a door and you make a turn and go around a corner and you're sort of transported to another time or another place. There's kind of this storytelling element that we found really appealing, and also just the strong visuals are, it's like the place is really photographed well.
Oh yeah, which I guess that leads me to the other question I was going to ask is that what do you think is the reason for? I mean, obviously Don and the background story is just fascinating as is, but like, what do you think it is about tiki subculture that has made it so enduring? Because I'm sure at some point in time people kind of saw it as this kind of lark, or it's very much of the moment. But it's continued to kind of stand the test of time and continue to be rediscovered. What do you think it is that kind of makes it resonate today?
I think it's what Alex referenced a moment ago, which is just that escapism a little bit. It's like you get out of work after 8 hours and you go sit down and you've got a cocktail in your hand and you're in, Hawaii or Tahiti or some imaginary place. It allows people to kind of, I don't know, not disconnect per se, but it lightens the load a little bit. It's a mini vacation for an hour or two. I think that will continue to be appealing forever.
Yeah, and it's changed over the years too. It's like Don's thing was like, if you can't get to paradise, I'll bring paradise to you. I think now that we're in, the 21st century, there's a lot of sort of issues around cultural appropriation and using these islands as an escape to us when they're other people's homes. But Tiki, I think, has kind of, as we've become more aware of that, it's sort of morphed into, well, it's just escapism. Like one of the bars that we filmed at is in Hawaii, Skull and Crown, and it's run by these great people, Noah and Angelina, who they're really into horror, and they do like sort of like Halloween mazes every year. They're like the biggest Halloween sort of company in Hawaii. So their escape in Hawaii is not a tropical paradise. It's more of this kind of like macabre horror thing, but it's the same concept as what Don was doing. And I think that more bars are starting to do that. It's less about saying, hey, it's this place we're going to. It's just a form of escape and really good cocktails.
Cool. Well, thanks again for making this really beautiful film and sharing it with us as the kind of opening night film here at SF Doc Fest. The thing I always try to remind our audiences is that, we're lucky enough that filmmakers like you share it with us early in a film's, life. And so our job is for the films that we like to kind of go out there and help spread the word, kind of be your grassroots street team. So what are ways that, people can continue to follow the film and also share information about it on social media or at their next backyard barbecue?
Yeah, well, all of our social media is at thedonnoftiki.com, two N's in Donn. And we have, a lot of other screenings coming up. So hopefully, just follow us and we'll kind of keep posting as these screenings pop up. So hopefully if you're not in the Bay Area and you can't make it to this one, you can make it to whatever the next one might be. But there's tiki bars all over the country and we're trying to have screenings around all of them.
Yeah. And everything is on our website. It's www.thedonnoftiki.com. So all of our socials and everything is on there as well. And you can, if you want to sign up for the email list so we can send out regular updates, you're welcome to do that as well.
Very cool. Well, everybody, go out and let people know that there's this great film, The Donn of Tiki, showing around, and let people know to kind of be on the lookout for it. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Chris.
Thanks.